Hello, welcome to the EverSky Developer Diary number 2. This last week I've been working on ship movement and ship control. The ships are currently physics based. I'm using phsyx for the physics engine. And what you'll see in this video is a couple of attempts to make the ship controls actually functional for moving around the world. The interesting thing to see here is that obviously the ship is based using a thrust-based model, and what it's doing is it's applying a force to the ship. It's also applying an angular momentum to the ship. So this first kind of attempt is interesting really, because I noticed that currently, because it's got momentum based on the ship, what happens is that as you're applying a force, it stores the current velocity in the physics model, so you get this kind of sideways skidding thing, a bit like a drifting in a car racing game. And unfortunately that's kind of a bit of a problem really, because although it's kind of cool in a racing game, it's not actually the most controllable thing in the world when you're trying to essentially use this craft for just getting around the world. So it's not meant to be that complicated, and at this point I speed the video up quite a lot. You'll see that it takes quite a while to get anywhere in the world, specifically because you're constantly having to correct the course, and because you're drifting offline because you've sort of thrusted in a given direction. So it's almost like a thrust model in a spaceship game really, and ultimately you need to do that in a space game because you want to be able to shoot at a guy while moving sideways, for instance, and people always kind of had debates about whether that kind of model was good or not. But and we're back to normal time again. But the problem is that ultimately it's not really good for actually getting to a specific point in space, especially when you've got a world that isn't completely and utterly full of reference, kind of something that you can visually reference. So that is a bit of a problem. So that was the first model, that was the first attempt. So the second model is a little bit simpler, or rather not simpler I suppose, it's more understandable. And all I do is I take the steering force, basically the sort of current velocity, and I align it with the ship's current heading. So every frame I'm basically realigning the velocity so it points in the direction that you want to go in. So basically if you point the ship in the direction that you want to end up, you should end up in a straight line from there. And so I showed you the sort of debug view here. This is the physics model. Currently the ship's a box. You can see the sort of wireframes on the chunks of land. And of course you still have the turning kind of momentum thing, so you still have to have a slow turn, which is kind of good because the ship isn't meant to be massively fast or massively maneuverable in this case. This is obviously a placeholder ship, but eventually you'll have a range of ships to play with. Obviously you'll have to earn them, of course. But the idea is that in general you're flying around the world to explore, right? So we want the exploration to be interesting. So I sped the video up again. It does take quite a while to traverse the area. But the one thing you'll see here is that it is a lot easier to kind of just point in the direction that you want to end up at, and that's kind of good. But of course doing this brings us to another problem, and you'll see it in this video here, and that is that when you're using a thrust-based model, basically anything with momentum, it's really hard to sort of judge distance. So in this case I just completely and utterly overshot absolutely everything. So I was trying to land on that little chunk of land in the right hand side there, and I completely overshot. So I slowed down the thrust, just did a tight turn, which is possible with this model, pointed back towards it, and then thrusted back in the other direction. But of course that's not really an ideal model either, right? Because you still want to be able to, you kind of want to be able to line up your view of the world and then just sort of stop. But ultimately I'm kind of going away from this model, I think, because the point isn't to make it so that the physics of the ships are necessarily brilliant. Hopefully on some of the bigger ships you'll be able to actually walk around them as part of a kind of, you know, like you'll be able to live in them. But for these ships, they're just carrying goods around. So really you just want to be able to go from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. So here we're back in normal time and I just jump out of the ship basically. Currently you have to point out the ship and press the G key and then, you know, jump out of the ship when you need to. So I'm thinking of going back to a sort of hand-based models where I'm going to do the physics calculations myself rather than using the physics stuff for it. And I'll show you more of that next time. Hopefully we'll have some more controllable characters. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, that would be good. If you want to see more information about the game, you can visit us at mindflock.com. Obviously I'll try and keep everything posted and hopefully see you in the next video. Thanks for your time.